Good day, everyone. My name is Brian Corbin. I'm the Executive Vice President of Catholic Charities USA. I want to thank you all very much, especially Catholic Charities of Fort Wayne, South Bend, for inviting me to be part of this really important Poverty Summit in light of the Catholic Bishops of Indiana's very important document called Poverty at the Crossroads, the Church's Response to Poverty in Indiana. By the way, I read that report several times when it first came out and just read it again recently as I was preparing for this talk. But a very insightful and powerful document that I'm sure glad that all of you have a chance to look at and have a way to respond to it, which is very, very important. I really like the way that the bishops put together C-Judge Act, and I'll talk about that in a couple minutes, and really looked at family life and employment and education and healthcare. And hopefully those become clearer too as to why those are so important. But thank you so much for inviting me today. I really want to start off by saying one of the major premises of the work of Catholic Charities of the Church in general is our very, very deep belief that every person is made in the image and likeness of God. That drives everything that we do in Catholic Charities and the work we do, that we see every single person made in that image and likeness of God that needs our help, that calls for our help, and that we want to be that image of God to them as they are that image to God to us. So that's the driving force as to what helps us look at a person and helps us try to respond to a person no matter what their situation in order to help them. So that's the deep premise of Catholic social teaching and one of the principal values that we proclaim as a church, and that drives us to what we do and how we do it. So many of you have probably seen hundreds and hundreds of documents about statistics and how do we talk about poverty guidelines and poverty thresholds. And again, this is the most recent 2021 general statistics on what does a person in poverty mean. So at the national level, it's $12,800 is basically the poverty definition. As you see, as households increase, the numbers become a little bit more aggressively larger in terms of what it means for the guideline. But again, think of 4 people living on $26,500. That's at poverty. That's what a family of 4 at $26,500 would basically be living at poverty. And in Indiana, you'll have very specific statistics as well, but I'm sure that others will be talking about. And then there's whole issues of how we come together on this. There's the Census Bureau, then the Department of Health and Human Services. They're the ones that make the determination on how we make these statistics change every single year based on reality of what it costs to live. So that's just something that I wanted to share with you. But again, it's general statistics, and you'll get more into that as you talk, I'm sure. I want to start also with a story that leads to some other stories. The story that I want to focus on right now is the one of the Good Samaritan. So here we have a story in Luke 10 about a scholar of the law asking Jesus, how do I get to heaven? What do I have to do? And Jesus saying to the lawyer, well, what's the faith say? What's the tradition say? And the scholar of the law says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus turns to the scholar of the law and says, you got it. That's exactly it. But in order to justify himself, that scholar of the law asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? So Jesus tells a story about a man walking from Jerusalem to Jericho. He gets beat up, left half dead. That's very important to be left half dead. It's a very important signal. A priest and a Levite come by. They walk on the other side. A Samaritan, someone who's an outsider, stops, binds the man's wounds, puts him on his animal, and brings him to an innkeeper, and tells the innkeeper, I'm giving you some money and take care of him. And when I come back, if I owe you anything more, I will pay you in full. Because then Jesus then asked the scholar, so who was the neighbor in this story? And the scholar said, I guess the guy that stopped and helped the man who was beat up. And Jesus said, exactly. Go and do likewise. So here we have a story that I want to take a translation from a moment or interpretation from Saint Venerable Bede, who lived in the 7th century, an Irish monk scholar. And Venerable Bede's interpretation of this Good Samaritan story is found in the stained glass of Chartres in France, near Paris. If you ever get a chance to go to that cathedral, you'll see the story come alive in stained glass. And this is Bede's interpretation, that the person, the man who's walking from Jerusalem to Jericho, is Adam, like an Adam and Eve. Each one of us, we are all on a journey. And at any moment, we could be beaten up. We could be left half dead. The priest and the Levite that walk by, they're concerned because if that body is dead, they may have to go through purification rituals in order to help them, because you cannot, because of the touching of a dead body. Remember, half dead, they don't know. So basically, they walk by on the other side, because if they're become impure, they may miss a whole rotation in their priestly duties. And it causes all kinds of paperwork, as we would say. So walk across the street. But a Samaritan, an outsider. So, okay, I'm a New England Patriots fan, and people in my office make fun of me all the time because I'm the only New England Patriots fan in sight. So one of them, they would stop. Someone like a Patriot fan would stop. Yes, this outsider, the Samaritan stops. Bede believes that that Samaritan represented in the story is a very specific outsider. Look at the 4 images of the Samaritan, and this person in blue has a very specific halo. That halo in iconography is only presented when they talk about Jesus Christ, the great outsider, the second person of the Trinity, God made flesh. Jesus himself stops, takes care of the person, brings them to an innkeeper, gives the innkeeper all the resources they need to take care of this person, and tells that innkeeper, do what you can do, spend what you need. When I come back, I will pay you in full what I owe you. Bede says that's the second coming, when Christ will come again and will bring us all back together. Because remember, the reason the scholar of the law asked this question is because he wanted to find out what he had to do to get to heaven. So this is the story that Jesus helps us understand. But another dynamic in the story that Bede reminds us of is that it's both the individual action of the Good Samaritan, or Jesus Christ, and it's the institutional response, the innkeeper. So you have individual heroic action or mercy or compassion and love and charity at the individual level, but then the innkeeper takes over, and the innkeeper continues that work as an institution. Thus, the work of Catholic Charities, and many of you who are in this room today. Individual actions of stopping to help someone in need, and then the support of the institutions that continue to help persons. So this is a very rich story that helps us in Catholic Charities understand what we're supposed to do. And that brings me to another part of stories. That statistics that I showed earlier on about what poverty threshold is, what the poverty rate is for a family of 4, those are general statistics and important. We need social sciences to help us understand. But there's also the stories. And it's the stories because these persons are made in the image and likeness of God. It's the stories of individual persons that we have to worry about. So let's worry about a Sally, who is a senior, who has on a fixed income and may run out of food at the end of the month. Let's talk about Jose, a young man with his son who may be escaping violence in other parts of the world to come to live here. And let's talk about Joan and Robert, who are a young family, who are just having a hard time making ends meet because of issues of unemployment or mental health or whatever, and they need some help. So these are the types of persons individually that we take care of individually in our work in Catholic Charities, but also institutionally. But it's the people that we serve that's really important. Pope Francis has basically said, as well as the popes, all the popes have said, that we really have to focus on the person who's poor, the person who's marginalized, the person who's vulnerable. And Pope Benedict had this very important sentence that it's really kind of something that we probably all know in our heart in Catholic Charities, and we people here in this audience, but no one is so poor that they cannot give something. And that's that interaction between seeing the person made in the image and likeness of God. And Pope Francis has been very clear talking about we have to get away from an economy that's built on exclusion and inequality and find ways to put human dignity back at the center of all the work that we do and all the economic structures and all the efforts we do. It's the human person that needs to be in part of that in focus. And then going back to Benedict, again, no one is so poor that they can't give something back. So it's that mutual relationship, that mutual encounter, that accompaniment, and that solidarity that we're called to be as Catholic Christians. And that's what Catholic Charities wants to do and is called to do. Here at Catholic Charities USA, which is their national organization, and Catholic Charities of Fort Wayne South Bend is a member of organization of ours. There's 167 diocesan members. And together as a country, that we serve all 50 states and the 5 territories of the United States, that we've all made a commitment over time since 1910. We've made a commitment that we're going to alleviate, reduce, and prevent poverty. That's our work. And our mission is to serve, to advocate, and convene. So our mission is to serve individuals and families and communities to help them alleviate and reduce and prevent poverty, to advocate for justice, and to convene people like you right now, to convene people in the community, to talk about problems and how can we work together. So that's our commitment and our mission. And that's what's happening right now today as you're all meeting. The Catholic Church has also left us with an important methodology. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, the pastoral letter that the bishops produced on poverty uses this methodology of see, judge, act. It has been part of the moral methodology since at least Rerum Novarum, and Pope Francis is very clear of articulating this methodology. And so what does it do? It's a way of thinking about what's going on here. We have to see the world around us. What's the sign of the times? What's happening? What's really going on with people's lives? And to listen and to see what is actually impacting people. And this is the use of our own experience, the use of social sciences, the use of natural sciences. The Catholic Church is not afraid of engaging in natural and social sciences. What is sociology saying? What's political science saying? What's economics saying? What's chemistry saying? And just to explore what that reality is. Then we have to filter that reality with judgment. And this is a judgment of, think of the Old Testament prophets constantly asking Israel, are we in right relationship with God, or what God are we actually worshiping? Are we doing idol worship, or are we praising and living in light of the God of the covenant? And so we have to constantly use our theology, our scripture, our Catholic social doctrine, and the magisterium of the church, constantly judge what is happening and what's at the heart of the matter. And then to say, what insights does our faith give us regarding current reality? What questions aren't we asking that our faith demands that we ask? Then that leads to action. What are we doing now to help people, to alleviate, to reduce, and prevent poverty? So what acts of charity, what acts of justice, and those will then have an effect. And that effect of what we do then brings us back to a new reality where we have to see, judge, and act. So the church has given us a very important skill set in constantly thinking about this. And that's what the pastoral letter was excellent at, in really helping highlight that methodology. We also, as part of Catholic Charities, have to think, and you in this room, have to think of ourselves as how are we positioned in someone's overall health of a community or well-being of a community. So think of a person as a whole, and about 20 to 40% is about illness, is about genetics, like what your mom and dad gave you. And it's about acute or chronic issues in health that maybe drugs or therapies can help. So when you say someone's health and well-being, only about 40% is really about the medical side. The 60% of someone's health is about other things like economic stability, neighborhood and physical environment, education, food, community and social context, and how the healthcare system itself works. So this is a very important thing that Catholic Charities and all of you in this room represent various sectors here today. And so all of you are important to look at the overall person and their social determinants of health and well-being. In Catholic parlance, we call this integral human development, of finding a way to how can the whole person and the whole family and the whole community have access to what it needs for well-being and to flourish for their full potential. So that's kind of the work that you do and the work that we're calling today in convening. How can we together work to solve issues around poverty in your own community? At Catholic Charities USA, we work very closely with our member agencies, like right here in Fort Wayne, to talk about what are some of our priorities. And so we have said in the past couple of years that we're really focusing on affordable housing, integrated health and nutrition, immigration issues, leadership issues, and Catholic identity, disaster services, social enterprise initiatives, and advocacy and policy initiatives. So that's how we at the national level have kind of focused to say we need to do some laser beam work in all these efforts, because together they're all part of that social determinants of health and well-being. And what you're here for today is how can you be part of that? What's your role, and how can you help build a healthy community? And so some lessons that we've learned along the way is I know that your agency may also be involved with LEO, which is right up the street from you, the University of Notre Dame, the Laboratory for Economic Opportunities, and looking at how they've been working with us and doing some studies with our agencies on what works, what's the evidence. We're also very closely working with the University of Tennessee School of Social Work and Catholic University of America and their education, psychology, sociology, and schools of social work. So we're trying to find ways that we can have third parties focus on and review and study the work that we do and see what results we get, and to use those results to help shape policy and shape practice. So we've had studies with Stay the Course in Fort Worth, with Padua in Fort Worth. We did a big study in Chicago with the 211 response system that Catholic Charities of Chicago is very involved with. Catholic Charities of Santa Rosa has been doing a lot of work with homeless respite care. And we have this project called Healthy Housing Initiative in Spokane, Portland, Oregon, St. Louis, Detroit, and Las Vegas, where we're trying to reduce chronic homelessness in those communities and working with Catholic healthcare systems and other healthcare providers to help stabilize people who are in need. So we have a lot of lessons going on, and we're very, very happy that as part of our work, we were able to get Professor Jim Sullivan at LEO, University of Notre Dame School of Department of Economics, on a national evidence-based commission. So we were thrilled that we were able to get someone from Notre Dame right in your diocese to serve on this important national, federally sponsored congressional committee on what works in America for poverty. So we're really happy with that. I want to leave with one quick message to you as business leaders and as community leaders. The Vatican put out a document recently, and I believe we'll have a link or maybe even some copies of this document for you, called the Vatican's document called Vocation of the Business Leader. You as a business or community leader have a vocation, a calling. You're using your baptismal gift, your commitment to who you are as a Christian or a person of faith or a person who just believes that you want to do the right thing. You as a business leader and a community leader have a vocation, a calling to do things, to help build society, to help reduce poverty in your community. And we have to all do our parts. Remember that showed that social determinants of health. We all have parts to play to make it whole. And the Vatican document from the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development has basically used See, Judge, and Act as well, and are telling us as business leaders that we have to see the world around us. We're seeing issues of globalization and financialization. We see issues around the environment and cultural change, as well as communication and computing technologies. So we have to see how are all those impacting what we do and how we do things. We also then have to apply judgment. What does our faith say? What does Scripture say? And what is the work of good businesses? And what principles should businesses use and think about that come from our faith, a faith tradition, and I'm speaking here specifically of the Catholic faith tradition, of how to look at the common good and how to look at human dignity and how to properly use our productive work and how do we manage what we own and how we possess it and how we distribute goods. So again, as a vocation, as a business leader, you have to think about seeing the world around you, judging, and then calling you to act. So how can you put in practice your vocation? How can you use your gifts, your virtues, your ethical social principles that I know you have because you're in this room because you have them? How can we engage in the work that you do as a business leader and a community leader to help solve the problem together? And that's basically boils down to practical wisdom. And how do we work together to get beyond cynicism, but find ways to live faith, hope, and love? So that's the church, again, reminds us as a vocation, as business leaders, you have a critical role to play as we try to find ways to solve or reduce or alleviate poverty. And in that document, if you have a chance to read it, the Vatican mentions that there are 6 principles for business that they think you should think about. That one of them is that business contributes to the common good by producing goods that are truly good and services that serve. That businesses maintain solidarity with those who are poor by being alert for opportunities and to remove obstacles to people. So you all have an important, very important role to play. How can then businesses make a contribution to the community by fostering the special dignity of work? Remember that human dignity is also part of how we work and how we labor. I worked in Youngstown, Ohio for 27 years, and I saw the impact of massive unemployment and how that meant for men and women who had just lost their job in the steel and auto industries. That dignity of work is so important. And how can we help businesses recapture that and live that virtue? And again, how do we look at subsidiarity? And subsidiarity means letting local institutions make local decisions, and those who are in a larger capacity to help you and to give you help. Subsidium means to give help, but the more local, the better. That's really important as you try to struggle and find solutions. And that's our job, is to help you find those struggles, define those struggles, and find ways of solutions. But we're here to help. That's the whole point as well. And then again, businesses model stewardship of the resources under their control, and also find ways of allocating benefits to all the stakeholders, employees, customers, investors, suppliers in the community. So I ask you to take a moment, if you have a chance to read this document, it's online, and it's the vocation of the business leader. And it's very, very practical things that are discussed there. I just give you the high level outline, but there's some very, very detailed ways that business leaders like yourself can be engaged in the work of reducing poverty. I want to thank you for your time and attention. I want to thank all of you. I especially want to thank Nicole and Daniel that really helped and invited me to be part of this. I want to thank all of you for the great work you're doing. And I want to extend a hand to say thank you. Together, we can find solutions that are meaningful to you at your local community, and know that as a Good Samaritan, you're stopping as an individual, taking your vocation seriously as a business leader and a community leader, and finding time to stop along the road to help a person with a special story that could be helpful. But then you have the institution like the Innkeeper, Catholic Charities, and other institutions that will continue and help organize that work of service, advocacy, and convening in order that we find a way to alleviate, to reduce, and ultimately prevent poverty in your town, nationally, and globally. Thank you for all you do. Thank you.